This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Something a little different today. Well, I don't know, not too different. An excerpt from my recent appearance on the Top Traders Unplugged podcast. Not the full thing, but I just picked a nice section to give you one of those trend-following reminders about how I see the world. I hope you enjoy this selection from Top Traders Unplugged.
I want to start by sharing a story with you, Mike. And I think you know the story to some extent, but I'm not sure you know the full background because I seem to remember seeing you tweeting about this. So it might be fun for you to know this. And this is from a friend who works at a firm that both you and I know very well. And he wrote me this just last night. And he said, a couple of weeks ago, I answered a call that came into our main telephone line. This was a very nice woman that told me that she was about to retire after serving 30 years as a Border Patrol agent, and her son had been bugging her for months to call us about investing. We spoke for a long time, but she kept referring to her son and how he wouldn't stop pressuring her to call us and to get his uncle to read these two books, which she referred to as The Turtle and The Trend. Her son sounded like a very smart guy, and so I asked if she could put him on the phone, and I was surprised when she gave me a hard no. I accepted her answer, but asked her to tell him that I think he sounds like a really smart guy, and he could call me anytime if he wants to discuss the books. She then told me why I wouldn't be able to speak with him, and it was because he's currently in prison. It turns out he was a smart kid, but alcohol was the problem and he did not overcome it before it got the best of him. She said for the last few years, his interest in investing had been what has kept him motivated in there, and he has read every book related to finance in the prison's library. Apparently, he's not the only one there that has an interest for investing because they formed a group to discuss everything they had been learning. That group determined trend following was the way to go. And the two books that everyone should read are Mike's. I'm sure Mike never thought he would have his own prison fan club, but I think he will love knowing he has what is called here in the States some serious street cred. Did you know this story, Mike?
I think I heard bits of the one with the guy, but I actually had a lady text me within the last couple of years. And she said, this was a lady, she had just gotten out of a female prison. And in that female prison, the Turtle Trader book ruled supreme. And she said people just loved it and talked about it all the time. And then afterwards, I said, well, and she was so nice. She wrote this nice write-up. And I said, well, can I send some books to the prison? And so I actually sent a bunch of Turtle Trader books to 2 different prisons.
Okay, so that's the story I heard from you. That's the one I remember now that you tweeted about or wrote about. So this is a different story because it is relatively new. It happened within the last 2 weeks. And what I love about this story really is, I think it demonstrates that trend following really is for everyone, like the turtle story demonstrates, and that you really don't have to have any particular degree to learn it and to practice it. Kudos to you, Mike, for putting things out there that people from all shades of society gravitate to. I think it's a wonderful testament to trend following, but also to the way you have made it popular for sure.
There's a cool aspect to that I was just thinking about as you talk about it. Why would something like this resonate in prison? Well, it's kind of like being on a desert island. You don't have access to all the other stuff necessarily or in a timely manner. So the folks in prison say, well, what do I have access to? How much time do I get to get this access? I would think that trend following probably has something to do with that because they can't be glued to all the fundamentals all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely true. I've got another question coming in that came in from Saeed. He asks that he would like to know from you, Mike. He says, "Hi, I would like to ask the question, which market sectors are generally observed to have longer term trends, and are any markets that you trade either long only or short only?" Of course, you've kind of answered that already because of fundamental reasons. So give whatever views you have on these things, Mike. Saeed definitely would like to know that.
Just being an observer like everybody else, and you can look at the data going back decades, is there one particular market or group of markets that we can all say beyond a shadow of a doubt is going to be the winner for that year? I don't know that I can give that information away, that I can say there's that one thing. I mean, we can all look at the last handful of years and say, should any of us been doing anything except the FANGs, the tech stocks? So I think it's really difficult. It's kind of a prediction question. It's kind of a question wrapped around, give me a prediction, which is tough because I think you can go back every year, probably in the last 50 years, and find a surprise that happened in terms of, I mean, look at you at Dunn. I mean, you guys don't know what's going to happen at the beginning of the year. You might say to yourself, historically, currencies have done really, really well for trend following, but you don't know what's going to happen at the beginning of the year. You have no idea.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the hardest concepts that people struggle with understanding fully, or kind of internalizing fully, the good old phrase, knowing what you don't know, that Larry Hite coined, that really we have no idea what's going to happen. So we want to treat everything equal. That being said, and this is something that was interesting because a couple of weeks ago we had Perry Kaufman on the podcast, and he develops systems, he trades himself, et cetera, et cetera. He's written a ton of books on the topic. And he was much more, which surprised me a lot, actually. He was much more about, no, I want to trade the best markets, meaning I will continue to optimize or identify which markets are doing best in, say, over the last 6 months, which is, as you say, very different to how we approach it at Dawn, where we just want to treat everything equal. So that caused a little bit of a debate, I would say, in feedback in the comment section about, so what is best? I have a feeling where you're leaning towards, but do you come across a lot of other people who try and identify, quote unquote, the better opportunities or better markets?
Before we started talking today, I jotted down just a quick note. I was thinking, and I don't think I've ever phrased it this way to myself. I was thinking, what are the 5 strategies out there right now for trading the markets? So I said, number 1, trend following. Number 2, buy and hold. Number 3, high frequency. Number 4, gambling. And number 5, bullshit. That's kind of my answer. There's no secrets to all this stuff. I mean, everybody can look at it and say, okay, I can see what, using Dunn as a great example, I can see what the guys at Dunn have done for decades and decades and decades. And somebody else can say, well, let's look at a different grouping of markets. Let's bring the time frame down. It's never ending. How does one want to slice it? Is somebody trying to build a business or a track record to appeal to institutional money? Or are they trying to be, and this is what I thought was so fascinating with Jack's newest book, are they trying to be a one-man show to just avoid all of that and make a bloody fortune? I mean, the people that Jack found that have made a bloody fortune by themselves, literally one-man shows, you say to yourself, well, gosh, there's a little bit of luck involved, there's a little bit of black swan involved, but they still have to do it. And it's some crazy one-man stories.
I think that's fascinating. I can't wait to talk to Jack about these things, because I actually think that in particular things like regulation and changes on that side has really made people rethink what kind of manager or investor they really want. So that sounds interesting.
What do you guys think about the landscape right now? Here we are in 2020. What's the landscape? I just read the most recent Howard Marks memo. A guy like Howard, who's made himself a fantastic amount of money, and he's just making a case for there couldn't be any more of an uncertain time than right now, which if you have a trend following mindset, that's music to your ears.
Exactly. That's music to our ears. I mean, it's always uncertain. I have the feeling that there's always a tendency to say here's like CNN saying, investing in uncertain times. Well, when is it never uncertain? I mean, okay, there is an election coming up in 2 weeks' time. Nobody knows what's going to happen exactly at that point. We'll be surprised. Maybe there's something happening again with COVID getting worse, and lockdowns and interest rates being zero or going negative. There's all that stuff going on. We'll just find ways, or our systems will find ways to react appropriately to these developments. On the basis of it, this is why We like trend following. But I just wanted to come back to this point real quick about the one-man shows, which I find fascinating. I have a lot of respect for that. As you know, I run an institutional money management firm inside the Munich Re Group. This is regulated like to the T by BaFin here in Germany. In this day and age, this means you have a COO, you have a risk officer, you have a compliance officer, you have this, that, and the other thing. You have like IT controls, reporting requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Before you know it, before you have the first euro or the first US dollar in assets under management, you are up to 5, 6, 7 people just as kind of like staff to run the operation. They're all on the payroll. They don't come for cheap. They definitely don't come for free. And then you need to go out and raise assets in an environment where fees are compressing. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We all know that nobody's getting 2 and 20 for trend following. When you step back and you just look at the economics of that business, you may, and I guess for the right reason, stand there scratching your head and saying, is this still the thing that I want to do from a business point of view? I mean, I have my heart in that. I don't want to do anything else. I'm 100% trading and trend following and systems and all that stuff. I have my energy and my passion for that. I don't want to move into fintech. I don't want to move into IT startup. But if you're like out there as a, say, younger adult and you're making your bets and your choices, like, where am I going? Am I going left or right? Am I going trading or tech or any of that? There's probably better choices, better options than the investment management / hedge fund business, unless you have something that is super, super alpha. But if you have something that is super, super alpha, then why sell that to anybody else for a fee? If it's so good, then you should be one of those unsung market heroes in Jack's book. I really see it split up that way.
It's an interesting point, especially for the regulation point, because here you guys asked me at the very beginning, so Mike, tell us about your trading. Tell us about how much money you've made. And then you're going to get some responses probably on Twitter like, well, Mike's answer sounded evasive. And then Moritz comes on and says, we've got regulatory strangleholds on us up the wazoo. Gee, I wonder why Mike is cautious with his answer.
It's a really interesting question that you posed, Mike. I have a lot of mixed emotions about what's happening right now in our industry. I was actually this morning, I found an old episode. I'm sure you know him as well. He has a huge podcast called Naval. And he has an old podcast because he posed a question on Twitter a few years ago, something like, how can you get wealthy without being lucky? And I actually truly believe that trend following is one of those ways. But he wasn't talking about trend following, of course. He wasn't talking about what he was talking about. A lot of the reasons why you might want to be wealthy, but not wealthy necessarily meaning money in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things was you don't have to go to an office wearing a suit every day and things like that. There's a lot of freedom and so on and so forth. Of course, we all know a lot of the pioneers in the industry and how they did something extraordinary with very little technology. They built some really amazing, extraordinary track records, which are really unrivaled by most other investment strategies, even to this day. But I do fear that some of these people and strategies and firms are coming under enormous pressure at the moment, as is trend following as a strategy. As much as the three of us truly fundamentally believe that this will continue to work, there are so many people nowadays that will question the strategy. Now, if history is any guide, and certainly my 31 years in this industry taught me that the louder that choir becomes, the next big opportunities in trend following are just around the corner. And I truly believe that. I think we're about to see a stretch of really strong performance opportunities as the world kind of implodes in one way or the other. But I will say there is definitely a risk for the industry to change dramatically, as it really has done in the last few years. Maybe this is somewhat personified by the fact that David Harding, whatever it was, came out a year ago or 2 years ago, whenever it was, saying, yeah, trend following is overcrowded. I don't really want to do it as much as I used to do. I'm going to do all this other stuff. And I think a lot of people said, yeah, if Harding is saying that, it's definitely must be true.
It's an interesting point. You stole my thunder in terms of my idea. I was definitely going to rattle David's name off. He's one of my favorite people. He's given me so much time over the years. And obviously, he's one of the fantastic, legendary success stories. I can think back to the mid-90s, and I was investigating and trying to understand who was doing this trend following, you were looking at really accomplished traders back in the day who had 50 million under management or 100 million or 500 million. There was a handful over $1 billion. So when David takes his fund to 30 billion entirely on a trend following track record, in some ways you have to scratch your head and say, what kind of possible distortions could have come from that? That's not to take anything away from David's success, but you have to look at all of a sudden, maybe the crazy guy that was writing the trend following books got it a little too popular, but a lot of money all of a sudden said, man, we need a piece of this trend following. And David was the arguably most accomplished one ready at the table to accept those funds. And he did a great job of that. But was it too big? Well, it seems to be that he even said that.
Yeah, sure. I guess what I was trying to say also is I just think that our industry will change, and we may well see some people saying, like we've seen in other strategies, no, actually, I don't want to really do it for a large crowd of external investors. I'll just do it at a smaller scale and I'll probably have better returns. Or we'll just maybe, and this is one thing that I've always felt that our industry was not very good at, and that is to respect capacity. I think this strive for being big and all of that just overshadows what it really should be about, and that is serving our clients and producing the best possible returns we can. But unfortunately, I mean, economics gets into the picture, and we all know that management fee income is pretty nice, especially if you're doing it at 10, 20, 30 billion. Anyways, it's a very interesting topic.
Mike, do you think that trend following is overcrowded? I mean, is that a concern to you? Do you think there's a way to really appropriately measure that?
No, there's no way to know because, and back to Jack's newest book shows that there are things around this planet, there are people around this planet, perhaps funds around this planet that don't want anybody to know who the blank they are. And you can guarantee they're out there. So while back in the day, I'm sure a lot of people wanted to get the recognition and they wanted to kind of bring trend following to the forefront. Some of my books helped to do this, but I'm sure a lot of people now are saying, well, hold on, do we need the attention? Do we need the attention? Do we want the attention? There's no way to prove that hypothesis, but one would have to be crazy to think that's not true. Like I said from the top, just a little selection from a recent interview show that I appeared on, Top Traders Unplugged. And one last thing before I go today, I've got a bunch of these free codes for Audible for my books, Trend Following and The Complete Turtle Trader. I've got like 10 or 15, 20 of these things. If you would like a free Audible book of Turtle Trader or Trend Following, first come, first serve. But there's one little trick. You got to go to Amazon.com only, and you got to write a review of my Trend Following book. Now you can say you hate me, whatever. Okay, fine, if you're crazy. But if you think highly of my Trend Following book, the 5th edition, the big blue one, write a review, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will happily send you one of these free Audible codes for either my Turtle Trader book or my 5th edition of Trend Following. And one last little idea that you might want to try. Go to the footer of my Trend Following website, trendfollowing.com. Go to the footer, and in one of the columns, you're going to see a link, actually several links, where you can go back and find a podcast on my show based on topic. So for example, I've got all of the Trend Following greats grouped to one link. I've got all the Nobel Prize winners on one link. I've got all the behavioral finance episodes on one link. Just a great little tip to dig through my 20 years of content and find cool stuff. And as always, if you have any ideas, if you have any questions, drop me an email. I'm easy to reach, michael@covel.com. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, Trend Following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times.
To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.